The MTR Corporation cannot explain what prompted a contractor to cut short steel rods in Hong Hom Station expansion project. ZTE reportedly reaches an agreement to get a U.S. ban against it lifted. And the venue for next week's Trump-Kim summit in Singapore announced.
Good evening and welcome. The MTR Corporation said today it doesn't understand why a contractor decided to cut some steel bars short in construction work at Hong Hom Station. The station is being expanded as part of the Sha Tin to Central Link project. The railway company has vowed to take legal action if malpractice is discovered. Winna Wong reports.
Who cut the steel bars short, and why did they do it? These questions remain unanswered even after today's press conference held by the MTR Corporation.
The so-called cutting of these steel rods, cutting itself takes a lot of effort. I would not speculate as to the reason they were using this methodology. It is not an approved methodology. It should not be used very clearly.
What the MTR Corporation did explain today was how the problem was discovered. It said during inspections at the Tuen Ma Line platform between August and December 2015, steel bars meant to be twisted into couplers in concrete walls were cut short. This means the bars were not properly connected with the couplers or did not go in as deep as they were meant to. During one inspection, as much as 5 steel rods showed this problem, prompting the MTR Corporation to write to contractor Leighton Asia asking for correction. The same issue was found during 4 other inspections. Asked how many steel rods were problematic in these checks, the rail operator only answered less than 5. Executives refused to say whether these were the same rods, so the total number remains unclear. Also, there are no records of these 4 inspections. The MTR Corporation says that's because so many works are going on at once. Not all checks are recorded in black and white. The rail operator, however, made it clear that all 26,000 couplers on the platform level were confirmed to be up to standard before the next stage of the construction began. The MTRC stressed the importance of open and frank communications with the public. But when it came to whether punishment will be served to the contractors involved, the operator didn't seem to have an answer for that today. Meanwhile, lawmakers across the political spectrum have slammed the firm and today's press conference.
The MTR should have issued warning letter to the contractor in August 2015, but MTR failed to do so and just let the contractor to rectify the problem on their own. But the problem happened again and again. It is totally unacceptable and absurd.
It wasn't particularly helpful. It did not answer some of the key questions that many people have been asking, but in fact, it probably opened up a few more questions.
The government had asked for a report on this issue to be submitted by tomorrow, but the MTRC says it will hand it in next week. Independent engineer Wang Qiming has been hired to carry out load tests at the station. Winna Wong, TVB News.
Well, in other MTR troubles, the government is demanding answers over reports that staff members were tipped off during an internal exam to become an engineer person in charge. Candidates were allegedly allowed to correct their answers before handing in their papers. The Electrical and Mechanical Services Department said it's very concerned, given the network serves 5 million passengers a day.
At least 6 quorum calls at today's Legislative Council meeting. This as pan-democratic lawmakers tried to slow down the second reading debate on the Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hong Kong Express Rail Link co-location bill. They also criticized the LegCo president for restricting their deliberation time. Kayla Bloom reports.
Call for quorum. The quorum bell rang at least 6 times today as LegCo resumed the second reading debate on the co-location bill. This piece of legislation would allow mainland laws to be enforced in designated areas inside the high-speed railway's West Kowloon station. All quorum calls were initiated by pro-democracy lawmakers who have repeatedly expressed their aversion to the bill.
The whole thing is taking Hong Kong for a ride, and unconstitutional, and with deep implications, and with losing its jurisdiction over part of our territory, losing about 1 million square feet.
However, pro-establishment lawmakers insist the bill is constitutional.
The NPCSC has laid down a clear decision stating that the arrangement is in line with the basic law and the Constitution. So clearly, the allegation that it is unconstitutional doesn't hold water.
Pan Democrats also criticized LegCo President Andrew Leung earlier today. Leung earlier restricted the bill's debate time to 36 hours and rejected around 2/3 of the amendments proposed by Pan-Democratic lawmakers.
At the moment, the president is trying to limit the debate to be finished within 2 weeks, after which we will have basically another month of time in LegCo and meeting time in LegCo to continue. So that claim about urgency is ungrounded.
After the second reading, lawmakers will have just 28 hours of deliberation time left. Meanwhile, there were reports of water leakage at multiple levels of West Kowloon Station today. The MTR Corporation said it will deal with the problem immediately.
With the very severe weather that we're having today, winds and with the heavy rain, there have been some water seepage in our West Kowloon Station, and of course these will be fixed immediately, and it is part of the trial operations process.
Leung also stressed that all issues will be resolved before normal express rail link operations commence. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Well, the standby signal number 1 remains in force unless a tropical cyclone near Hong Kong intensifies. The observatory says the chance of issuing the strong wind signal number 3 today won't be high. Heavy downpours this morning resulted in a section of Yuen Long Highway being flooded. The amber rainstorm warning signal was in force for more than 90 minutes earlier this afternoon. More than 70 millimeters of rain fell in an hour in parts of the new territories. Macau authorities also noted a low chance of issuing a higher typhoon signal today.
Shenzhen-based ZTE has signed an agreement in principle that would lift a ban on buying parts from U.S. suppliers. The deal would allow China's second biggest telecommunications equipment maker to get back into business. Alan Booknia reports.
U.S. companies have provided an estimated 30% of components in ZTE equipment, which includes smartphones and gear to build telecommunications networks. The company ceased major operations after the ban was imposed for breaking a 2017 agreement by shipping goods to Iran and North Korea in violation of U.S. sanctions. Under the amended deal, the Commerce Department will add an additional fine of $1 billion to the $361 billion paid last year under the previous settlement. ZTE will also pay $400 billion that will be held in escrow to cover any future violations. The company also promised to replace its board and executive team, something it failed to fully do as part of last year's settlement. ZTE will also allow unfettered site visits to verify compliance. The company had devised elaborate schemes to hide its resale activity. The proposed deal is meeting with strong resistance from both Democratic and Republican politicians in America. They accuse Trump of bowing to pressure from Beijing to help a company that has been labeled a threat to U.S. national security.
More details are being released ahead of the June 12th summit in Singapore between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The high-stakes nuclear talks will be held at a luxury resort on Sentosa Island.
A historic venue for a historic meeting. With extra security already in place, workers are sprucing up the Capella Hotel. Advanced teams from both nations were spotted at the hotel last week in preparation for the summit. Sentosa Island is known for its high-end beach hotels, golf courses, and amusement parks. The luxury hotel hosted British officers in the 1880s and is known for its privacy.
Capella being on Sentosa, a resort island, makes it easier to cut off without disrupting the rest of Singapore. So you could really create a safe space for the summit to happen without creating much disruption at all.
Trump, who is hoping to secure a deal to shut down North Korea's nuclear program, says preparations are moving along well.
A lot of relationship being built, a lot of negotiation going on even before the trip, but it looks like it's coming along fine. We'll see what happens, but very important. It'll be a very important couple of days.
最新開戶獎賞，靈活提存兼每月賺你數。全新客戶以港幣20萬開立活期存款，每月可享3000里數。存款越多，里數賺得越多。
存款都賺你數，只有渣打做得到。
Standard Chartered, here for good.
Has the Kim family playbook, which has been used for decades to avoid actual compliance with agreements which have been reached with the United States and the world community.
We all want this to succeed. Let's get this straight. This should not be a partisan issue. This should be an opportunity for a successful Singapore summit.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will visit the White House to hold talks with Trump before moving on to Canada to attend a Group of Seven summit. Abe is expected to reaffirm Japan's close cooperation with the U.S. He will urge Trump not to forget Tokyo's security concerns ahead of next week's summit.
Italy's new populist government has won the first of 2 votes of confidence needed to start governing. This after its leader denounced Europe's failed immigration policy. In his inaugural address ahead of the Senate vote, Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte warned that his cabinet would renegotiate Italy's fiscal obligations so it could help struggling Italians. Conte, who until last week was still teaching university law classes, was interrupted with applause nearly 36 times. The Five-Star League Alliance secured 171 votes in favor from the parliament's upper chamber, well beyond the minimum needed to pass. Lawmakers in the lower chamber are set to cast confidence votes later today. And still ahead in our newscast, almost $7 worth of red sandalwood being smuggled into Hong Kong seized by customs officers. A tree collapse at Hong Kong U student dorm. And fashion designer Kate Spade dies in an apparent suicide.
Customs officers seized close to 6 tons of suspected red sandalwood, valued at about $7 million. While protected timber is normally mixed and smuggled into Hong Kong with ordinary logs, officers say it's the first time they've detected the species inside hollowed-out gypsum boards. Elmi Lung reports.
Do you see the red tint? That's what makes red sandalwood valuable. In fact, 5.7 tons of that comes at a cost of roughly $6.9 million. It's the Customs and Excise Department's largest seizure of its kind this year. Officers said they singled out a 40-foot-long container from Malaysia yesterday at the Kwai Chung Custom House Cargo Examination Compound. Inside, the protected timber hidden in hollowed-out gypsum boards. What gave it away? As Joy Wong of the Ports and Maritime Command explains, such boards made up less than 1% of all Malaysian imports in the past year. Also, accompanying documents varied in format and content from normal ones. The forms are also incomplete. Authorities think the wood may be used to make expensive furniture. So far, no one has been arrested for the smuggled goods. Here's a reminder, though. Anyone found guilty of importing or exporting an endangered species without a license is liable to a maximum fine of $10 million and 10 years in jail. Elmi Long, TVB News.
The Department of Justice is seeking a retrial for 3 defendants accused of taking part in the 2016 Mongkok riot. Last month, a 9-member jury found localist Edward Leung guilty of one of 2 rioting charges. But the jurors couldn't reach a majority verdict on the Portland Street rioting charges against Leung and 2 other defendants, Lee Nok Man and Lam No Hin. A pretrial hearing is set for July 18th.
A 40-meter-tall tree smashed into a school bus parked by a student dorm at the University of Hong Kong. A toppled tree crushed the roof of the bus. Luckily, no one was hurt. Firefighters later sealed off the area to remove the fallen tree.
Now to the shocking death of Kate Spade. The fashion icon was found dead in her New York apartment in an apparent suicide. Police are investigating to determine if she truly did kill herself and why. The body of 55-year-old Kate Spade was wheeled out of her flat in Manhattan. It was the housekeeper who found her hanging from her bedroom doorknob with a red scarf around her neck.
It appears at this point in time to be a tragic case of apparent suicide, but it is early in the investigation.
Police will be searching for evidence to rule out the possibility she may have been murdered, and here's why. Her husband and business partner, Andy Spade, was in the house at the time. It's not clear how long she had been dead, so the medical examiner will perform an autopsy. The couple's 13-year-old daughter was at school at the time, and officials said a note was found at the scene telling her daughter it was not her fault.
There was a suicide note left at the scene. I'm not going to get into the contents of that note, but that appears to be the sum total of what it is at this point.
Tributes are pouring in, giving Spade kudos for building a fashion empire on the popularity of her signature handbags. Fans say having a Spade bag was a sign that you were in the know, and without her, the fashion world will suffer.
And it's just been such an iconic brand, you know, very classic, but making preppy cool with all of the glam and the sequins and the color.
It's the same thing with when Robin Williams died. Like, you see someone who kind of made a career off of making people smile or building a brand that made people smile, and it's sad.
I think it's tragic, and my family loved her. We have so many of her items. It's horrible.
The fashion guru was so successful, she expanded into creating accessories, shoes, luggage, and even a home line. In 2002, she shared her handbag design success.
I was looking for something very simply designed, and not kind of, and I don't mean basic design, but something very clean, but also it had to have a personality. I thought that you could do both. I thought there was a way to combine something that was very functional and simply designed, but also you enjoyed wearing it and you looked forward to it and you really wanted to have it.
The company she founded, Kate Spade New York, tweeted, "We honor all the beauty Kate brought into this world." It now has over 140 retail shops and outlet stores across the U.S. and more than 175 shops internationally. And that is a wrap of our news.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.